on the flip side, if you have winners of the offseason, that is only compounded by the fact that there's definitely losers or teams that didn't do exactly what they needed to do. And right now, I want to take a look at some of those losers. So, Nick, take us through who your NBA offseason losers were.
Yeah, and my biggest loser, and I think we both have this, the Milwaukee Bucks. This team has it completely imploded. Really, this team who was once looked at as the team to beat in the East is now just a kind of a middle of the pack team with a big star on the roster. You add Drew Holiday, but you give up so much for him. This is a guy that Giannis wanted. If this was kind of one of his demands for him if he's going to stay. You got Drew Holiday, but at a tremendous cost. And then you add DJ Augustine, who's an aged guard who may add some help off the bench. I mean, he was putting up okay numbers in the last couple of years. This is a guy who he's really not going to do anything for you, and he's really not a game changer. The Milwaukee Bucks are in a limbo situation right now, and I don't think that they clearly didn't make any improvements from last season. I think they got worse. I don't think that this is true competition for teams like Toronto or Miami or Boston anymore. I think that Milwaukee is towards the end of the playoff the playoff teams in the East, and I can't imagine that Giannis is happy with this at all. And with him with an expiring contract this season, if I'm him, I'd be looking to explore the open market and not being quick to re-sign with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I think he definitely needs to take a step back from the organization and take a look at his surrounding and say, is this where I want to be? Do I have the best possible team to win with, especially with the way that some of these teams in the East are starting to get younger, they're starting to build up. There is no Giannis outside of himself, and even LeBron James right now is not, I think, the caliber of Giannis's talent. I think that he is a completely different specimen. LeBron James is his own player. And I don't want the LeBron James fans to just bombard me, but he has his own skill set, and he cannot do what Giannis can do, and vice versa. Giannis can't do what LeBron James can do. Not to say one's better than the other. I'm just saying that they are completely different players. The fact remains is that Giannis needs to take a hard look at what his market is going to be. Yes, Milwaukee's great, and it would be awesome for him to stay in such a small market and give them some notoriety that like he has been. But they need him more than he needs them. And I think he needs to come to that realization and say, maybe there is a better situation out there for me. Maybe I look at a team like the Golden State Warriors. Maybe I look at some of these other teams and say, can you utilize my services? Can you provide me the championship that I need? I mean, I've heard some interesting teams that have been thrown around. I just mentioned the Golden State Warriors, the Phoenix Suns, the Toronto Raptors, the Boston Celtics, the New York Knicks. Those are some of the teams that I have heard, in the Houston Rockets. Those are some teams that, if you just imagine what Giannis could do on any of those teams, outside of the Knicks, I think they are automatic championship contenders. And I don't know how you can get away with, if you're Giannis and you're the Bucks and you're looking at each other and saying, okay, Giannis, we need you to come back. And Giannis says back to them, you didn't do what I needed you to do, and I'm going to fall short yet another year. And the failed Bogdan situation is really going to come back to bite them, I think.
Oh, for sure, for sure. The Milwaukee Bucks are in a bad spot, and this is going to be a situation we're going to have to watch out for to see how he does with the pieces around him with very little offseason, I can't imagine this is going to go well for them.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what the Drew Holiday trade was, just so we have that on record here. But the New Orleans Pelicans traded for Drew Holiday. Sorry, they traded Drew Holiday to the Bucks for Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, and 3 first-round picks. The Milwaukee Bucks don't have a first-round pick for like 6 out of the next 7 years or something like that, or 7 of the next 8 years, or something absolutely absurd. I think that is something noteworthy that not only will Giannis take note of, but free agents that are possibly looking to go there, and other things that he's going to want to take a hard look at and say, this might not be the situation for me.
Yeah. My second team that completely lost this offseason, the Houston Rockets. This is a team that was in what looked to be full tank mode. They were going to trade off all of their assets, gather as much draft capital as possible so they could build up through the draft in the next few years. And it looked like they were doing a pretty decent job until they couldn't find trade partners for Russell Westbrook and James Harden. And it's not like there weren't suitors out there. Their demands were just outrageous. I mean, they could have gotten a haul of draft picks. They could have gotten some good depth pieces, but they refused. They wanted a big piece in return. They said to the Nets, hey, if you want Harden, we want Kyrie or KD. And that's just, how can you ask a team for that? Washington wanted to trade for Harden as well, and they wanted to trade John Wall for him, and they said no. I mean, that's a great piece that they could have traded for, along with some draft capital. The Knicks wanted Russell Westbrook, but they were asking for an arm and a leg, and they gotta know the market that they're in. They gotta understand that you're getting some older players. Yes, they're still elite players, but they are not going to be performing at their prime levels for that much longer. And so with the value of these players deteriorating over time, the Houston Rockets had no idea what the value of their players actually was when everybody else knew what it was. And now they're stuck with 2 players who absolutely do not want to be there. You have a brand new head coach, you have a new general manager. This team is in such disarray. It's going to fall on its face, and you're going to make James Harden and Russell Westbrook look bad this season, and their trade value is going to drop significantly going into next offseason. The Houston Rockets are in bad shape moving forward.
Yeah. Besides it being so much of disarray, I believe that it just looked sloppy. I mean, the Houston Rockets, they fired Mike D'Antoni. That's how they start the offseason, right? They fired Mike D'Antoni. They fired the GM, and they wanted to basically bring in an entire new idea of how to play basketball, a different mindset, if you will. And James Harden and Russell Westbrook are part of the same philosophy that D'Antoni was bringing, is, the 7-second offense, if you will. The shoot the 3 as soon as you get an open shot, and we'll have one big guy who can rebound and pass it right back out. And that's why they had the Robert Covingtons, the Eric Gordons, the you name it. They had all these 3-point shooters who could sit around the perimeter, and then you had one guy in the middle who did all the rebounding. It just obviously never worked out for D'Antoni or the Houston Rockets, which is why they parted ways. The problem is they're left with all the remnants of the D'Antoni era, minus Robert Covington, and they have no direction. I think my biggest issue with the Houston Rockets is they were not able to unload their star talent for any sort of direction facing future. There's nothing that should point to any sort of positivity from the standpoint that the front office knows exactly what they're doing. I just can't understand what the Houston Rockets are trying to get accomplished here. That being said, I think that they have a lot that can still get done. I also had them as a loser in this scenario, so I think that overall, they still can make the jump. It just depends on, does James Harden and uh, Russell Westbrook get traded before the trade deadline? I think that's the tentative hold I have on them being labeled losers right now.
Yeah, and then the final loser of the offseason, the Indiana Pacers. I mean, they had one job, one goal for this offseason, and that was to get Gordon Hayward. And they completely failed. They fell on their face. They couldn't come to a deal with Danny Ainge for a sign and trade. I mean, it was such a miss. You know, you were wanting to move on from Miles Turner. He's not going to be there. He's not your future, and you have no pieces around him. I mean, Danny Ainge was asking for a little bit more in return, and you said absolutely not. If you want Gordon Hayward that bad, then it's it's worth it. So I don't understand what the Indiana Pacers were doing, and then with the failed sign and trade, with the failed deal, they did nothing. This is a team that is going to go nowhere. They have no plans for the future. They have no stars besides Miles Turner. What is Indiana doing? I mean, they want to end. They're kind of turning into the New York Jets of the NBA, where they're going to be a bottom of the barrel team for the next few years, and with no direction. The Indiana Pacers make no sense.
Yeah, the one positive thing I'll give to the Boston Celtics was that they were able to get one thing out of this Gordon Hayward situation, is that they got a $28.5 million trade exception, which is the highest in NBA history, meaning that they cleared $28.5 million in tradable cap space that they can bring on a massive contract from another team. So if you're looking at some of these veterans that are not in good favor with the teams that they're on, or they're not going to make the playoffs when they thought they were, the Celtics can take on one of those players with no issue whatsoever. That being said, to bring it back to Indiana didn't want to give up Victor Oladipo and Doug McDermott along with Miles Turner. They wanted to give up one or the other, preferably Doug McDermott. And by not working with Danny on a way to get all three to Boston in exchange for basically the trove of first round picks that Danny Ainge acquired from the Kyrie Irving and or not Kyrie Irving, for the Paul Pierce Nets trade and the Kyrie Irving trades. I think that essentially what they were given was a whole lot of garbage, and Indiana should have made the deal. Because they were looking to get rid of Victor Oladipo anyway. They weren't looking to hold on to him. They just wanted to get him off in a separate deal. So the fact remains that if you're going to try to ship him off anyway, you take a little less to get the player that you wanted. Not only did you not get the player that you wanted, but he went to the Charlotte Hornets, who have gotten much stronger, and he wanted to come to your team. He wanted to get that done, and you just couldn't get it done. I think that this is a completely failed experiment across the board for the Pacers, and they need to be ashamed of themselves. And it's rumored that the Miles Turner trade still may happen with the Celtics, even without Gordon Hayward. I'm not exactly sure what the Celtics would be giving up at that point in time. That's a different discussion for another time. But if that happens, I think they drop to the number one loser of the offseason, because if you still trade Miles Turner to the Celtics, didn't get Gordon Hayward, I don't exactly understand what you were trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, it's an absolute mess in Indiana with no direction in sight.
Yeah, and
it's ridiculous.
Completely agree. Yeah, no, for sure. But I have three NBA offseason losers of my own, and I'm just gonna run through them quickly. First, the entire NBA. The entire NBA lost. Why did the entire NBA lose, Mike? Because the Lakers got stronger. Hello, they just wiped the floor with the entire NBA in the bubble and throughout the postseason, and then they got stronger. They added Six Man of the Year Montrezl Harrell. They got a younger, slightly better version of Rajon Rondo in Dennis Schroeder, Kentavious Caldwell Pope, and oh yeah, Marc Gasol, who's a stretch five. What? And then obviously they're going to re-sign Anthony Davis. Like, it's a foregone conclusion. I don't think anybody's really concerned about that at the moment. And so you're telling me that the best team in basketball weakened their biggest competition in the conference and got better along the way? How in the hell should everybody in the NBA should just be like, are you effing kidding me? Like, what are we supposed to be doing here?
It's not really a competition anymore. I mean,
they're just buying it. They're buying their way to the finals.
Yeah, and it's players. It's a lot of these veterans who are saying, "Hey, we'll take a team friendly deal to go get an easy ring."
Yeah, easy. They don't care what their quote unquote legacy becomes. Yeah, I mean, Marc Gasol already has a ring in Toronto. You have Montrezl Harrell, who's been on he's been on plenty of losing teams in his career. Dennis Schroeder hasn't seen what a win looks like in a long time. I think that you get all these players that can fill certain roles for you. You got so much stronger, and now you're just going to wreak havoc on the entire NBA. I don't know how anybody but the Lakers wins in the offseason with the way they conducted themselves. Specifically Montrezl Harrell. I'm very angry with him. I want to speak to him and his mother. The Boston Celtics are my second loser. Now, I am a huge Celtics fan. I mean, hello. I love Boston. But the Celtics botched a whole hell of a lot this offseason. Just to give you an idea of what they went through is the fact that they botched the Miles Turner trade with Indiana by not getting that done. Whether it was their fault or Indiana's, doesn't matter. They both lose, right? By not getting that done, both teams lose. They lose Gordon Hayward for literally nothing. And you can tell me that they got that $28.5 million trade exception. The fact remains that 80% or almost 80% of trade exceptions are actually not used. And if you're telling me even if they have the most, who are they going to be bringing in that is going to be worth that amount of money to help this roster and not damage the camaraderie that they already have built? Outside of somebody like Blake Griffin, and who's not going to be dealt, I really don't understand exactly what they're going to be using this room for. On top of that, you got Tristan Thompson, who, again, is an outmoded center. I don't think he's really all that great. I think he was a great piece around LeBron James, but you bring Tristan Thompson and Kendall Jenner to Boston. There's just a whole hell of a lot of nothing going on in Boston. I think the team got weaker by losing Gordon Hayward, and they didn't do anything to really give me a lot of satisfaction as a fan moving forward. I like their draft picks in Aaron Nesmith and
Peyton Pritchard.
Those were really good, but we have to see that game translate to the NBA. They were great in college. Let's see what they can do moving forward. There's still a lot of questions that I have with the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, it was definitely a very disappointing offseason for the Celtics, but I think there's a little bit of upside with their draft picks, and I think Tristan Thompson he's an upgrade over Enes Kanter, so I think that this team is getting some height and some offensive help that is going to help them improve. And I think these rookies definitely have a spot on the roster, and I think they're going to help them down the stretch. I think that they're going to help them off the bench, give them some help. I really think that these two are going to fit the system well. So that's why I don't have them as a loser in this draft or in this offseason. I think that there is a little bit more upside than a lot of the other teams that had off seasons.
Yeah, I would also say that the one upside to Boston's offseason was getting the max extension deal done with Jason Tatum. I think that was a big issue looming over their heads. They got a 5-year, $195 million deal done with Jason Tatum. They lock him up for the best part of his career, essentially, and they made some other moves. Again, they didn't stand out to me all that much, but the fact remains that I'll be interested to see, outside of this Jason Tatum and Tristan Thompson move, whether the Celtics can utilize their trade exception to go after a player maybe like Bradley Beal or I don't know, you name it. I really don't know who else to go after.
Right.
But we'll see. And then my final loser that I have here is kind of an interesting one. It's another player like I had for the winners, but I have Trevor Ariza.
Oh, this is sad. This is just sad.
It's just sad, man. Just to give you an idea, Trevor Ariza, if you're listening to this by some
grace of God,
just sit at home and wait for the dust to settle before you try looking for an apartment anywhere. Maybe just a thought. In less than a week, Ariza has been on four different NBA teams as part of various trades. First, he was with the Portland Trailblazers, who dealt Ariza in 2 first-round picks to the Houston Rockets for Robert Covington. Then the Rockets traded Ariza and a first-round pick to Detroit as part of a sign-and-trade with Wood. Then Detroit shipped Ariza to the Thunder. He has an expiring contract worth $12.8 million. So he gives teams the ability to lose a contract at the end of this coming season if they're looking to continue to build and refresh their roster and whatnot. On top of the fact that he's a good player. I mean, $12.8 million for Trevor Ariza is not bad at all. I think he belongs on a championship contending team. He can definitely fill a role as a bench 3, a good swing forward that can help you as much as humanly possible. But I just feel bad for Trevor Ariza, man. I think that he needs to figure out exactly where he's going to be best utilized and then look for apartments there. But, I just don't think he's in the final destination. I don't think the Thunder is exactly where he's going to stay. And I'll be interested to see where he moves going forward.
Yeah, with all these moves, it makes him look like he's an average player at best when he's a great forward. I mean, he still can offer a contending team some depth that's going to help them against other playoff teams. So, I agree with you. He's definitely not in his final destination this season. And I think it's going to work out for him. I think he's going to land in a better spot where he'll be better utilized and a scheme that will fit him much better than where he's at. So, keep the hope up, Trevor Ariza. This isn't the end for you. And, the grass is greener on the other side.
Hopefully.
Breaking
news, Trevor Ariza traded again.